You've bought an Ender 3 size printer and you're ready to print your very own cosplay props and armour, but it can be very difficult to fit these big cosplay helmets on this size printer. In this video, we'll be showing you how to 3D print your very own Sylvie Crown from the Loki TV series. It's a very quick and easy project and easily fits on an Ender 3, so let's do this. Hi, Tracy here from Astrocyte Cosplay. In this video, we'll be showing you how to 3D print your very own Lady Loki or Sylvie Crown from the new Marvel TV series Loki. This model was purchased from do3d.com. I will leave a link in the description below if you want to go and check it out. So here we are in Ultimaker Cura. This 3D file from do3d.com comes with 3 separate STL files. The main headband piece and the 2 horns are separate STLs. Now I started with the main headpiece of Sylvie's crown. When you drop it into Cura, it does orientate it like this. So I just did a quick reorientation to drop it down a little bit flatter onto the bed, just so we're not using as many supports. Now if you can't get this quite as close, you can untick this snap rotation, and then that will allow you to adjust it a little bit more detail. And then so I got it down flat like that. So let's have a quick look at the settings that I used to print this. I did a 0.16mm layer height just to preserve some of the detail in the piece, especially around this front bit that was going to be a little bit more difficult to sand. 15% infill density and using cubic, 210 degree printing temp and a 65 build plate temperature as I'm using PLA plus. A 15mm per second print speed, as I've just found that this has been the best quality on my Ender 3. So this is the main part that's very important, is your supports. So I generated supports and used touching the build plate, as it was trying to support into these little horn holds, but they didn't really need it and they're going to be covered by the horns anyway. I did do a support density of 10%, but I did find the supports were very hard to get off. So I would consider dropping this to 5%, and that should make things a little bit easier for you. And I definitely printed with a raft. Now you can see here that there's not a lot of material touching the build plate. So if you don't use a raft, you're going to have some pretty bad adhesion issues. So let's slice that and see how we're looking. Okay, so that's telling us it's going to take 13 hours and 7 minutes to print and use about 53 grams of filament. So let's have a quick preview of that just to see how it's looking. So you can see all the supports that it's generated here in the blue and the raft that it's done. So we've got some good adhesion on the build plate now, and it's supporting a little bit under the horn holes. And you should always use this slider just to really preview layer by layer how this is going to turn out. The main things we're looking for here is probably around those horn holes, just to make sure that nothing starts to print in midair. And if you print it like this, it really should work out for you too. Okay, so let's have a look at the printing of the horns. I did print both horns together in one shot. So the only thing I was worried about was the adhesion, because again, there is not a lot that's going to be touching the build plate with these 2 pieces. And mainly this one, I wanted to make sure that we could get enough adhesion underneath. So I did rotate this one down a little bit to try and get the supports down the bottom. This one, the broken horn was okay. I just didn't want the front bits to be facing up, so I didn't lose the detail in this, because you're definitely not going to be able to sand that bit. So, and I just used all the same settings that I did for the main headpiece. So let's try slicing that and we'll have a look at how it looks. Okay, so this is just telling us it's going to take 4 hours and 28 minutes to print and use about 17 grams of filament. So let's have a quick preview of that. Okay, so it's putting some supports under here, a little bit in the back here, which is fine. Now, this one here, I'd be a little bit concerned about maybe the adhesion, so you could rotate it back a little bit, but it's not too bad. So if we have a look at the layers again, you can see here that seems to be printing fairly well. We'll just rotate that around so we can see the front. So you see here, nothing sort of prints in midair at all. It goes up on each other. Question for cosplayers: what 3D printer do you own, or are you looking at purchasing? Leave a comment below. With our crown hot off the printer, we're going to try and remove these supports. Now I did have a lot of difficulty getting these off. Just be careful that you don't flick anything in your eye, wear some safety gear. I did have to use the clippers to help me get them off. Now it's pretty rough on the bottom where the supports is, but we will be showing you how to clean that up later. Now this is just to give you a quick idea of how it's going to look together. So using a heat gun, we're going to heat up the plastic. Don't go too heavy on this because you don't want it to completely melt. But you're then going to hold it into shape and just slightly hold it in and then let it cool, and you're going to just keep trying this on until it fits your head. So this, you can see here how rough it is from the supports. We are going to try and clean this all up with a soldering iron. So just running the soldering iron along the edge, just be careful, it will melt fairly quickly. So here we are on to sanding. I just normally start with about a 150 grit sandpaper. Making sure you get into all those little creases and crevices. It can be quite difficult with pieces that are quite detailed. Here we are, we're going to hit it with some primer filler. This really helps fill in some of those layer lines. Don't go too heavy, do a couple of light coats. So you can really see here I had a little bit of a layer shift at the front here, and you can see in the sides the primer filler definitely shows all those layer lines that you haven't sanded out yet. So here we're going to go with some 400 grit sandpaper and give it some more sanding, so really focusing on those areas that you can see now that have layer lines. Make sure you wear your dust masks. It is plastic dust that you're scraping off here. So you can see here, this is where the supports were. It is still pretty rough, so we're actually going to fill this in with some wood filler. So we're just pushing it in with our finger, trying to get it to go into those cracks. Now you can wet it down just a little bit just to help smooth it out and get into those cracks. And again, we're sanding. Once this dries, it just sands off easily, and you can see that it fills in some of those deeper crevices. So going up in the sandpaper again, and we're going to try a little bit of wet sanding just to really smooth that down now. So time to glue on those horns. Just using some super glue here. Now make sure you give it a bit of a sand where you're going to put some super glue to give some good adhesion. Just putting it right around where you want it to go on and holding it in place. And looks good, all glued together. So now we're going to go over with some flat grey primer. This just helps with the paint sticking to it, and also again shows those last layer lines and details that you may have missed. So again, giving it another bit of a sand just to smooth down any of that primer and any last layer lines. So now we're going to do a black base coat before we're going to do our silver. Just go light on, you don't want any drip marks. So looking good, and now it is time for some gold paint. Now I use this antique gold rub and buff. Be cautious with this, a small amount goes a long way. So we're just dabbing a little bit on the finger, wiping it off, that's how little you need, and wiping it along. Now I was going for a somewhat weathered look, so not completely covering in all the parts and leaving some of those black parts exposed to give it a weathered look. You can go as hard or as light with this as you want. If you wanted a full gold look, go heavy, get it all in there. You could use a brush to get it right into the cracks and crevices if you wanted. I was just looking for the weathered look. And we're done. I was so impressed with how this gold rubber buff came out with the weathered look. For more 3D printed projects, make sure you click on the playlist that's on screen, as well as another video we think you'll enjoy. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you in the next video, and remember to keep having fun doing the things you love. Bye!